All right, good day. This is April 9th, 2021, and this is the OSU Turfgrass Team Times. Online today, we have Pamela Sherratt, Todd Hicks, Dr. Dave Gardner, and Dr. David Shetler, and myself, Ed Nangle. And so we are starting to get into warmer temperatures. I think most of us would probably take a little bit of rain right now, and that is statewide. That is not just a regional thing. I think a lot of us are still very much on the dry side, but that doesn't mean that the pests and other problems, such as two-legged ones, are not causing problems for us. Without further ado, the campground guru, Pam Sherratt.
Good morning, everybody. So just a quick update with Sports Turf. Obviously, everybody's back and running, just hit the ground running now because catching up with seasons from last year, everybody wants to be out. And so, we've got baseball, softball, soccer, lacrosse, those are all geared up. And so I guess my point this time of year is always about seeding versus pre-emergent weed control, and making sure that if you do put pre-emergent weed control out, that it is a product that will not inhibit the seed germination, because especially on high traffic fields, your number one goal is to get seed established and to keep some kind of green ground cover on the field for consistency and safety of those fields. So just be super, if you farm this out to a company that does the spraying for you, make sure you have that conversation that they're not spraying something that will inhibit seed germination for 3 months, because your priority is to get seed out. And it is actually the ideal time to seed right now. Our soil temperatures are at 55 degrees. So it's a great time to seed. And of course, it's also a great time for crabgrass to be germinating, which I'm sure Dr. Gardner will be talking about. Another thing I just wanted to mention, last week we had the Grounds and Greens seminar, and there was a few tips that some of the sports turf managers talked about, and I just wanted to share them in case some of you didn't have a chance to be on those calls last week. Number one, I think I really liked this tip from Brian at Sylvania Rec. He really felt like an investment in a paint machine was something that's going to help them moving forward to save money. And so it is a $30,000 to $35,000 investment in an automatic paint machine, robotic paint machine. But he really feels, looking at the budgets on manpower, that it really would save money over quite a short period of time. There'd be a quick return on investment. Laser painters, the same. These guys talked about laser painters and not having to have the manpower out there to run string lines. Again, it gives you a return on investment. One of the things that was mentioned is that there is going to be quite a severe lack of grass seed this year. And so you really need to start getting those orders in, get your POs in right now and order your seed for this year, because there's going to be there's been some issues out west where they grow it, and there's going to be a significant reduction in seed production this year and availability. And the same with materials. If you're doing drainage, any kind of drainage projects, anything like drainage pipe or anything like that is severely lacking. And it's not just about the materials not being made because of the pandemic, but the issues with shipping. So again, don't wait till summer to do that project and order the materials. Start trying to plan ahead for things like that. Again, with Brian, I really liked his team's invested in 5 104-inch wide 0-turn mowers, and he said that's completely revolutionized how much they can mow. They've also adopted a plant growth regulator program. He said he's heard me talking about plant growth regulators for years and always just ignored me. And finally, last year during the pandemic, they decided to give it a go because they needed to reduce the amount of mowing they were doing. And they'll never turn back, because not just the reduction in mowing, which is about 50%, but also the quality of the athletic fields and the wear tolerance of the fields is significantly improved. So again, just be thinking about some of these things. Growth blankets, obviously getting more popular, not just because it helps you grow grass in high traffic areas like goal mouths, but it also keeps people off. One of the things one of them mentioned, which I really liked, they sat down as a team and they talked about who can do what because of the reduced manpower. And the people that didn't have kids kind of stepped up and said that they would take the times to mow where perhaps other people were having to be at home or drop off a daycare or a school and things like that. So I really liked that team approach to come with planning on mowing. And finally, Brian Gimble at OSU said something which I wrote down and I thought it was great. because his manpower was cut, he actually went to the administration and said, listen, I need you to think about me as a coach. I'm a coach and I can't do anything if I can't have a team. It's a team effort. I'm the coach of that team. I can't win if I don't have a team. And I just really liked that. I think it worked. I think he got his people back. And I just thought I would share that. So we are going to put those videos. We did record some of the panels and we'll get those out via OTF. If you remember, you'll get to see those. And that's all I have today, Ed. Sorry if I waffled on.
Oh, no, you didn't waffle. Absolutely not. David Gardner, follow that. And unmute yourself.
I thought you did the unmuting. Well, good day, everybody. I hadn't heard that there was a shortage of grass seed. I was concerned enough when I heard that there was a shortage of ketchup and oil foil packets, but now this is actually a problem, the shortage of grass seed. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Let's talk a little bit about weed control though. Everybody's probably seeing these in bloom. They've been in bloom for a couple of weeks, and this is our indicator plant that it's time to put out our crabgrass pre-emergence herbicide, right? Fun fact, this year has been pretty warm, but actually March was almost exactly the same as last March. The average temperature for the month, the number of days that the highs were in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it was all very, very similar. Now, this is the first time in the last 25 years that we didn't have a single day in March where we had a high temperature below 40 degrees. But April 1st, we had a high temperature below 40 degrees here in Columbus, but it is definitely warmer than you would usually think that it should be at this time of year. In fact, this week in Columbus, I believe the high temperatures have been more like what we would usually expect the first week of June. That said, if you go to GDD Tracker or another similar site, they will tell you that some crabgrass is starting to germinate, and this is not everywhere. This is, like where you have heat sinks, right? So in bare soil that's close to concrete or south-facing walls or things like that, you probably are starting to see some crabgrass that's just beginning to germinate, right? That same tracker is saying that we're also a little bit late for the application of pre-emergence herbicides. Now, late for the application of pre-emergence herbicides doesn't mean that you can't do it anymore. So like what this site is saying is that, basically Kentucky and points south, yeah, you need not bother anymore. But in areas that are shaded in the orange, what I would tell people is that, yeah, you're a little bit late, but you could go out and check the site. And if you don't have crabgrass germinating yet, you probably still have a little bit of time to get your pre-emergence down. Usually for crabgrass to germinate, we like to have several rainy days with mild evenings, so like lows in the mid to upper 50s and a soil temperature around 58 degrees. Right now, the soil temperature is 54, 55, which is pretty close. But if you look at the forecasted temperatures for the next 2 weeks, we're supposed to have a little bit of a cool down, a return to more of what we typically would expect for temperatures in April. If anything, it's supposed to be a little bit below normal, which just like last year, this is a slide that I showed almost exactly at this time last year. I just changed the numbers a little bit. Things are going to cool off significantly for the next couple of weeks. And so when we have high temperatures in the upper 50s, we're not going to have a lot of crabgrass germinating. And so you do still have a little bit of time. Check if germination has occurred on site, and if it has not, get your prodiamine and other formulations out as soon as possible. If you're using dithiopyr in a liquid formulation, that is effective on crabgrass that has germinated and is no more than 1 or 2 leaf stage. Granular dithiopyr, not so much with that early post-emergence activity, but the liquid would still be effective if you have some early germinating crabgrass. But again, check your sites, and if you don't have germinating crabgrass yet, you still have a little bit of time, but you should be wrapping that up. The other thing of interest is that our grasses are starting to green back up. It differs by species, and so this is what Kentucky bluegrass may still look like if you've got lightly shaded Kentucky bluegrass. Perennial ryegrass and all of the other cool season grasses are a little bit further along. And so you might have areas where you're starting to mow. So we're kind of in that phase of grass green up where it depends on the species, what things are looking like. But I am starting to get some calls from folks because at this time of year is when all of those annoying grasses that we don't want in our landscape become really, really visible. All of those coarsely bladed grasses. So things like downy brome, or quack grass, or orchard grass, or tall fescue growing where it's not supposed to be growing. You can undergo the exercise of trying to identify these grasses if you want, but generally speaking, if you have a coarse textured grass at this time of year that is greened up and actively growing, there is not a selective herbicide available for control, period. Okay, so if you've got these grasses and you want to get rid of them, you're looking at using a non-selective herbicide. Now, maybe some potential good news is that, I don't know if people have seen this, but recently the EPA reviewed glyphosate and determined that there are no risks of cancer when this product is used correctly. Now, there's going to be a lag between this and when some distributors are comfortable stocking their shelves with it again, but just know that, some of the controversies associated with the use of glyphosate are not being borne out by the latest review that is that has been conducted by the EPA. That said, there are some alternatives. The problem with many of these is that they're not truly systemic. Glufosinate, which there's a new formulation of that this year, Cheetah from New Farm, it contains glufosinate, which has some systemic activity. We usually describe that as a locally systemic product. It's not a bad option. It's just, it might not be as likely to completely translocate through the structures of a plant like quackgrass, for example. All of the other non-selective herbicides are contact, though. There are some organic alternatives, like there's one called Whack Out Weeds, WOW. Almost invariably, these contain things like table salt combined with some kind of oil or extract. And there's some locally systemic activity with those too. But for permanence of control, glyphosate continues to be the only real option out there. So we're in kind of a strange period now. There's 80,000 pending lawsuits in this country over the use of glyphosate, but the EPA has come out recently and said there's not actually any evidence to suggest that this truly is a carcinogen. So that makes it less likely to cause cancer than things like, sunlight, for example. So I don't know what people want to do with that, but just to say that if you have those coarse textured grasses, there are no selective post-emergence control options for those. And that's what I have for this week.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. And I can never mute any of you people. You all have your own control. With death and destruction on the plant pathogen end, Todd Hicks.
Thanks, Ed. Good afternoon, everybody. With these dry conditions and these super nice weather conditions, it's been an absolutely horrible year for me as a turf pathologist. There's nothing to look at. We came out of winter with both types of snow mold, which is unusual for the state. But with these weather conditions, they healed up very quickly and disappeared on most folks. Leaf spot's usually a general threat this year and extends through the summer. But again, being dry and mild weather conditions, we haven't heard anything about that. The only thing I am hearing is trouble with keeping up with maintenance. A lot of people went out heavy and hard because of this weather system. We've had lots of golfers on the courses. So people are drying out really quickly, having to get their irrigation systems up much quicker than they normally would to stay ahead. And they're worried about water going in the summer. The thing that I have worried for me is one, anthracnose. If you have a history of anthracnose, watch out. I think between the stresses of getting stuff mowed down and getting into normal maintenance regimes and all the play that's going on, you could stress your turf out early and that could show up on you. Be watchful of temperatures, soil temperatures. Make sure you get into consistent soil temperatures before you make those summer patch applications. If it's the 65 degrees for 3 days and then it turns super cold, I might want to hold off on that. Look for a very consistent pattern. Wait for April to settle out. As Dave pointed out, we're going to get cold here for a bit and maybe get back into our normal weather pattern. So don't get real fired up for your summer patch. Other than that, nothing's really stressing out. So dollar spot may not appear for a while yet, especially if you're starting to make some applications and fertilizations out there. The one thing I want to clear up, apparently on Joe's last turf times between Joe and maybe Ed, the OTF Research Center address got very confusing. That's where we're having you send samples now. So if you need to drop them off, come see me out here, or send them to here. The address is 2710 North Star Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43210. Don't send them on Friday or Thursday. They need to be sent Monday through Wednesday, so we get them sometime during the week. If it comes at 4 o'clock on Friday, I'm not going to see it till about 6 a.m. on Monday, which means I'm going to be calling you or emailing you telling me to spend more money and send me another sample. So with that, hopefully this clears that up and makes the diagnostic process a little easier for you if you're going to drop them off. Most of you already know where the turf center is. We have plenty of parking. We're going to have a fridge right out here in the outside bay, easy to get to with extra sample forms and so forth. But that's all I've got this time, Ed.
Thanks, Todd. Of course, now that you said it's extremely dry, we're all going to need Noah's Ark by the end of the month. So don't worry about it, folks.
You know, Ed, if I
Whoa! Everybody got excited. Pam, hands up. You get first.
The zip code is not 43210. It's 43221.
All right. I did
That's
not do
right,
any of
that's-
this.
For
And I'm
that's
not
actually
editing.
a-
shipping.
I'm not editing any of this out either. So carry on.
That's actually a more important contribution than what I was going to say. I was going to mention, you talked about it being dry. When you ask about what is normal, we've had above normal rain in Columbus for 4 years in a row. So the chances of that happening for 5 years in a row would be 0.5 raised to the fifth power, which is 3%. I would plan on it being dry this year just because chance says that that should be the case.
With that, Dr. Gardner is going out to Vegas tonight. All right. Following up, and last but not least, Dr. Shetler.
Thanks. And I guess I don't really have a picture for it, but I do want to indicate that the annual bluegrass weevils, for those of you that are in the northern part of the state, and we do have a local infestation here in the Columbus area, that the weevils are definitely up and out, and very likely potentially even laying eggs in the grass stems, the Poania grass stems right now. That probably means that you're going to need both a curative and a preventive insecticide. And you'll probably have to use, my feeling is that the superintendents that I worked with up in the Akron, Canton, Cleveland area have had really good success with Aloft, which contains both clothianidin and bifenthrin. The bifenthrin component will kill the adult annual bluegrass weevils that are still out there. And then the clothianidin component is systemic and will get into the grass stems and will catch any of the larvae as they hatch out. And so that's my primary recommendation for the state of Ohio. This wouldn't work on the eastern seaboard where they've got highly resistant annual bluegrass weevils to the pyrethroids and even some of the other categories of insecticides. But we've not seen that here in Ohio. And so I'm not overly concerned about that kind of a recommendation. I'm going to show you some pictures of what I saw. Whoops, let me go back up. I had a phone call from one of the lawn care operators here in the Columbus area last week. He said he had a lawn that was pretty well beaten down. It was mainly brown. Unfortunately, he had already hit it with pre-emergent herbicide. And when I saw it, I said, you're going to have to slit seed this and reseed it. And he said, well, I've already put down pre-emergence. And I said, well, I guess your customer is going to deal with muddy turf or muddy lawn in the front for a while. What we found underneath that turf, and basically this was a lawn that he had just picked up. It had been sodded in the summer of 2018. When he talked to the homeowner, he said, what did you do after the sod was put down? And the bottom line answer was not a damn thing. No fertilizer, no water, nothing for basically 2.5 years. And of course, it all died. And so these are native crane fly larvae that were in there. And what they're doing is eating the dead thatch and organic matter. These are actually pictures from a local school grounds. They say that it's a soccer field, but it was nothing but crabgrass that had died down. And so this is the crabgrass remains. And when you pull back the crabgrass remains, there were some sod or the crane fly larvae. Now, these are the native crane flies. Remember, we had that big flight last fall. Everybody was freaking out about it. Those were native crane flies. Well, because of the wet conditions that we'd had earlier, they did a good job. They laid their eggs, and this is the result from them. The larvae themselves they look like a big maggot. However, if you put them in your hand, they'll eventually poke out their little black head capsule, and they'll probably expose their little anal papillae, and that will tell you that those are crane fly larvae. I like just putting them in a little bath of water, and they will expand out. You can see the head capsule, and you'll see the anal papillae. If you just put them in water, they'll float around, expand out, and you can see all of those features in there. There's no reason to panic with these. There's really no reason to control. All they're there for is to eat the dead organic material. The last thing that I want to mention is that for the last 2 sunny days in my front yard, I've been having the pavement ants going out, and this is basically 2 colonies fighting each other. And it's amazing that homeowners panic about this. They often think they have to run to the garage and get the can of gasoline and douse them and torch them. They're fighting each other. They're killing each other. Just leave them alone. They're doing a pretty good job. You can see them here close up that these are 2 ants from different colonies. They're locking their jaws together, and eventually one will bite the other one in half, and then they'll cart away the dead body. So it's kind of nature's ant control. Just leave it alone. They're doing a good job. Okay, that's all I've got.
Sorry, Dave, thank you. Nothing but a good old ant war to keep everyone on their toes. Okay, folks, I would like to say thank you to everybody here this morning. And once again, if you have questions or any further things that you want to ask or get on top of, feel free to reach out to any of us. And I will probably check the address of the turf farm in North Star Road somewhere online, probably the OTF website, just to confirm that zip code. Without further ado, thank you so very much, folks, and we will talk to you next week.